This is LSAT PrepTest 158, Section 1, Passage 2. This is a humanities passage comparing two literary figures, the Native American Trickster and the European Picaro. The difficulty here is medium to low. The structure is straightforward, but there's a trap baked into paragraph 1 that will cost you points if you don't see it coming. Now, the author's argument here is pretty simple. Critics started calling the Picaro a trickster, and the author thinks that's wrong. They look similar on the surface, but they're not. Paragraph 1 is a setup, and it is designed to fool you. You want to read it at normal speed, but keep your guard up. The author lays out all the reasons that critics lump these two figures together because both live on the edges of society, both go on episodic adventures, both are morally flawed. Sounds like a pretty solid comparison, but that is the trap. The author is building this case just to tear it apart. If you read paragraph 1 and you think the passage is about similarities, you're already off track. Everything after this paragraph exists to say, no, actually, these are nothing alike. Now, paragraph 2 zooms in on the Picaro and only the Picaro. And here's what you gotta lock in. The Picaro is a satirical tool. He does reckless, honest things. Society gets outraged. But the joke is that society does the exact same stuff in secret. So the Picaro works as a foil. His openness exposes everyone else's fakeness. And then society punishes him for it. They push him out. That is the gap between the Picaro's honesty and society's hypocrisy. That's where the satire lives. You don't want to get lost in the details here, of course. You just gotta walk away knowing one thing. The Picaro's flaws point outward. They expose a problem in society, not in him. Now on to paragraph 3. This paragraph is the one that matters most. You want to slow way down here. The author draws the real dividing line here, and if you skim it, you're going to get the hardest questions wrong. The trickster doesn't do satire full stop. The trickster does not hold up a mirror to anybody. Instead, the trickster lives in myth. No real society, no historical setting. And here's the part you really got to catch. The trickster's flaws belong entirely to the trickster. They are not exposing anybody else's problem. They exist to teach listeners what not to do. So the Picaro's flaws point outward at society, the trickster's flaws point inward. Same trait on the surface, but completely different function. And the author drives it even further. The Picaro ends up on the margins because society shoved him there. The trickster ends up on the margins because that's just who the trickster is. Same result, totally different cause. And if you miss that distinction, you're going to pick an answer that treats the two characters as parallel when the whole passage is arguing that they're not. Now, paragraph 4 is just an example you want to speed up here. The coyote falls in love with a star, reaches too high, gets dropped. The audience sees their own foolishness reflected back. Now, you don't need to memorize the story here, you got to know why it's there. It proves that trickster tales are all about universal human weakness, not about criticizing any particular society. Now, notice those last few words. The listeners recognize in themselves the trickster's hopes. That is the author underlining the trickster's purpose one more time. Now, the key move here is the split between what the Picaro's flaws do and what the trickster's flaws do. Foil versus cautionary example. That is what the test writers will build the hardest questions around. The author thinks calling the Picaro a trickster is misleading. Not just imprecise, but actually misleading. It hides the fact that these characters serve completely different purposes in completely different kinds of stories. Now, here's the trap most students fall into. They remember the similarities from paragraph 1 more vividly than the contrast from paragraphs 2 and 3. So when a wrong answer says something about shared traits or common functions, it feels right, but it's not. The author set up those similarities specifically to dismantle them. Now, before you touch the questions, you want to make sure you can answer these 3 things. First, why does the author spend all of paragraph 2 on the Picaro before even mentioning the trickster? Second, what is the difference between being pushed to the margins by society and ending up there on your own? And third, is the coyote story proving the author's point or introducing something new?